Hello, good afternoon, viewers at home. Uh, this is another opportunity to come online and be able to follow up with our discussion in genetics. Today, I've come on a new ground with a very captivating title, which is still on pedigree and consanguinity. Pedigree and consanguinity. So we want to make use of these two as a kind of tools to diagnose bad blood in the family. Bad blood in the family. Genetically, you will understand very well that in our earlier discussion, I pointed out that pedigree is nothing but a symbolic representative, a symbolic representation of the family tree. So that will actually help us to be able to see and know how some diseases can be inherited in the next few generations. Okay, I told us that it is a kind of a symbol that will tell us the inheritance pattern. Then I said consanguinity is nothing but the practice of marriage, that is intermarriage between two couples that are related by blood, And just like I said, genetically, what do we mean by bad blood? Bad blood here, they are talking about affected blood, okay, or affected gene. So this time around, we are talking of affected gene, or what you can call a trait, because we believe that if there is any genetic disease at all, that must have actually happened at the genetic level. So the last time I stated categorically four different case studies. So the first one has to do with autosomal dominant inheritance. Then the second one, we look at autosomal recessive inheritance. Okay. Then the third one, we look at X-linked recessive inheritance. And we also look at if there is a bad blood. Let me be using that. If there is a bad blood that is only resident in mitochondrial DNA, what will be the pattern of inheritance? Mitochondrial inheritance. Okay. So don't forget, I cited example of Huntington disease. Okay, disease. Then I also mentioned cystic fibrosis in autosomal recessive fibrosis. Then X link, or what you call sex link, is going to be hemophilia. So then the last one is called Leber's hereditary Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. Okay, so and the short form is NOHN. Now we will start. What we want to do today is we will look at the inheritance pattern. We pick them one after the other. We look at the inheritance pattern, then at the same time we will now try and look at what should be the clinical manifestation of each of these disease. So first, let's go to the first one, which has to do with number one, which is Huntington disease. So we want to look at the clinical manifestation or the clinical manifestation of this kind of disease, and where can it be, how can it be inherited within the family. Don't forget that we said the pedigree is nothing but is a way of diagnosing bad blood within the family. So if this disease is just coming up or is just manifesting at in any family, so what would be the clinical appearance or the clinical manifestation, so that we will actually know that it is a Huntington disease? Apart from that, that it is also what is called autosomal dominant gene. So I said in the last one of my videos, I said that in human there are 23 pairs of chromosomes, and chromosome 1 to 22, they are called the autosomes. Whereas chromosome 23rd, which is the 23rd one, is what is responsible for the determination of sexes, whether it is going to be a male or the person is going to be a female. So there are diseases that affect, number 1 and 2 affect autosomal genes, whereas X-links is what actually happen in what? In sex chromosomes. And the last one is not on the chromosomal DNA, but it is in the mitochondrial DNA. So the first clinical manifestation of Huntington disease is what is a condition that we call which is neurodegenerative. So that is telling us that what's going to happen is that the such a patient or such individual will not be balanced in terms of there will be problem in the neurons, especially in the central nervous system. So then in this we now have there are major symptoms that we can see. So for example, this is a involuntary jacking of jacking movements, which is called chorea, and that is involuntary jacking movements that you can see around. Then apart from that, there will be a condition that they call muscular contraction. Okay. Apart from that, there will be dementia. The person will not have any this that. They are going to be, you will be saying one thing, the person will be saying another thing. So we also have impaired judgments. So the person will not be able to make the right judgment. So whenever you are explaining to somebody that this is exactly what happened, and instead of the person to actually come and do a kind of impartial assessment or impartial judgment, as the case may be, you just discover that this person is already, in fact, what is going to be the sense of judgment of that person is going to tell you that something is wrong at the neurological level. So that is that. Then apart from that, we also have the person we have problem of depression. Every time the person will not be able to, will just be depressed. No time is going to be a joyous moment for that person. Then apart from that, you just see there's going to be anxiety. Every time the person will just be anxious. Oh, why can't you do this way? So the person will be so anxious because it is some of the clinical symptoms that we see in people with Huntington disease. Okay. Then apart from that, there will be a kind of loss of control. Loss of control when the center is no longer making, is no longer holding the whole body. You just discover that the person will lose control, and at the end of the day the person will fall so many times. So the person will fall so many times, and it can lead to what is called jackie, which is epilepsy. So the person will at a point in time become so epileptic to the level that you won't be able to. So this is some of the clinical manifestation of Huntington disease, and the cause in the chromosome 1 to 22. The cause is going to be when there is a CAG repeat. When there is a CAG repeat in the gene. If there is CAG repeat in the gene, C is standing for cytosine, adenine, guanine. So if this one repeats itself so many times, so you just know that this person might eventually have something that is a condition that is known as Huntington disease. So if you collect blood samples of people with this kind of diseases, you just discover that at the genetic level, when you do the whole genome sequencing, you just discover that part of their chromosome 1 to 22 is already what? Is already having a CAG repeat. And if you have a CAG repeat, some of the the major thing is that the person will have a neurodegenerative disorder, and when this kind of disorder comes, there will be jackie. So there will be muscular the contraction, there will be dementia, loss of memory, complete loss of memory. In fact, the person will change. The person you saw last week is going to be too different from the person you see in the next month, because of the level of their reasoning. It will be degenerating. So that is when they even reason like a baby. Even if you ask them for any judgment, they will just do what? They will have nothing but impaired judgment. Depression will set in, anxiety will set in, there will be loss of control, epilepsy will set in, and a lot of irritability problem. So when others are making sound judgment, this person is going to make a kind of so in fact, at a point in time when there is loss of control, so even the person will now even will just urinate on itself. So this all these conditions will come down. That's why they call it a neurodegenerative disorder. So some places whereby they have they don't want to call it Huntington disease, they will rather call it neurodegenerative, and it's nothing. So let's now look at the pattern at which this can be inherited, or this can be passed from one generation to another. So the first one is that what is going to happen is that the father will be affected. The father will be the one that is affected, okay? So that you'll be able to see. So the father will be affected. So the person will now marry somebody who is normal. Somebody who is unaffected. So what that means is that there will be 50% chance. So if this person is 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 and 5, this is child 1, child 2. Okay, so I don't let's even get to a level. This is 2, this is 3, this is 4. Okay, the person is going to have 50% chance. So this is affected. This person is affected male. So this is unaffected female or mother. Okay, so this one has the ability 50% chance of passing it to his children, and it also has 50% of being normal. So any of those, remember this is not X-linked, so irrespective of whether the person is a male or female, he has a 50% chance of passing it to either the son or to the daughter. So you can now see that this one is affected male, this one is unaffected female, this person is going to be unaffected male, whereas this person is going to be affected female. So if you look at the affected is 50% opportunity, then if you look at those that are going to balance is also 50%. So this is a condition, this is a pattern of what you call not only Huntington disease, any traits or any inheritance pattern that is autosomal dominance or autosomal dominance inheritance. So it is going to follow this pattern. That is, the first generation, they have 50% of passing it into their children. So it's going to have 50% into that. Okay, so that is that anyway. So the second condition is a condition that is called cystic fibrosis. Cystic fibrosis. So if anybody is having any autosomal dominant inheritance, if you now look at their children, look at the siblings, true. So just discover that the same way that the father is looking like is the same way that one of their son or any of their siblings, I said it is irrespective of whether irrespective of the sexes, whether they are male or female, they just have 50% of passing it. So if you want to diagnose, that is, you want to trace it back now. You want to trace it back, you now say that from this generation, you'll be able to guess what might be the genotype of the parent, because you just discover that one of them will look like their mother, because the mother is unaffected. And don't forget that this is a way, don't forget what we said, that is pedigree as a way or as a tool to diagnose bad blood. So Huntington disease is a bad blood, and which has a lot of neurodegenerative syndrome or conditions, and I've listed some of the manifestation and symptoms that you can see. So if you now want to see, if you want to, as a geneticist, if you want to know where the problem could be coming from, so even if you cannot see this first generation, you cannot see the parents, but you can, what you can see is just their children should be able to predict or diagnose from here that, oh, this kind of condition, did you notice it in your mother or did you notice it in your father? So that case is what we have on board. The pattern of inheritance is not only disease, not only bad blood, not only bad blood, but generally, it is only diseases that we can talk about diagnosing. So if it is a normal trait, people would not actually want to worry about what is happening anywhere. If somebody is healthy, nobody is having any condition that is, so nobody will want to go into what the past could be, and nobody will also want to know what the future will be. So you, as a geneticist and as a genetic counselor, so what you should do is just, you have to start asking some probing questions, and by the time you start asking them some probing questions, you will be able to know what might likely, or where they might likely actually be from what. So if two couples now comes to you from different family, so you know the probability of having this kind of disorder in this family here. So you now compare it with what you have in another family. So as a geneticist, with this, you'll be able to know what you can say, whether they should go on to marry, or whether one way or the other they could actually seek other way out. So, and there's no other way around, because it's a genetic disease. So, and if it is a genetic disease, it is something that must have roots you can see it has its roots at the genetic level. So it will be very difficult to actually. So what you can do is just to offer counseling. You offer counseling, and don't forget that genetics, we believe in good breed. That was what Mendel was actually telling us at that time. So we believe that we must be able to improve and increase in the next breed, the next generation. So by the time you now know this, you'll be able to know, you know the history of this family like this, you'll be able to know what to actually offer if you are to offer genetic counseling. So without wasting our time, please let us go to case study 2, which I call the case of autosomal, still autosomal, but this time around it is recessive. It is recessive. In this case, this trait is what? Double. This case means that it is a homozygous. That's why it is called autosomal dominant inheritance. But in this case, it is a autosomal recessive inheritance. So this is a case whereby you have it in a heterogeneous condition. Okay. Now, example, critical example of the bad blood here is what is called cystic fibrosis. So that is that condition which is called cystic fibrosis, or what some people can call CF. So cystic fibrosis affects many different organs. It affects lungs, it can affect pancreas. It can also affect liver, and it can also affect the intestines, any of the intestines. Okay, so and is as a result of a mutation in a gene that is called CFTR. Here, I told you that in the case of autosomal dominant gene, I said it is as a result of a repeat of CAG in a gene that is called HTT. So, the autosomal recessive inheritance in the case of cystic fibrosis that affects major organs, the lungs is affected, the pancreas, the liver, and the intestine, is as a result of a mutation in a gene that is known as a CFTR. Okay, and let's now look at the major clinical manifestation of somebody with this kind of condition. The first thing is that the person will begin to cough uncontrollably. There's going to be wheezing. Okay, the person will be sneezing at any point in time. Then there will be shortness of breath. Okay, then there will be production of a very thick and sticky mucus production. Okay, then there will be production of a retarded growth. Okay, apart from retarded growth, there is going to be malnutrition. The person will not be able to feed well or eat well. The person will not be able to do it. Then there's going to be, the person will eventually have a condition of infertility. So the person will not be able to give birth. The person will be infertile at a point in time. Okay, then you will now also discover that there is going to be inability to digest fats. In a condition that is called steatorrhea. That is inability to digest fats. So all this will be the clinical manifestation of somebody with cystic fibrosis. Don't forget that somebody who is having an autosomal recessive related infection or disease, which is similar or which is called cystic fibrosis, is as a result of mutation in the CFTR gene, and the person will be affected with the lungs related infection, heart disease, pancreas related, liver related, intestine related, to the level that the person will continue to cough uncontrollably. The person will be wheezing. There will be shortness of breath. The person will start producing thick and very sticky mucus. The person will be retarded in terms of growth. Malnutrition will set in. The person will be infertile, and the person will have that ability will not be able to process or metabolize fats in a condition that is called steatorrhea. So let's now look at the pattern of inheritance of autosomal recessive gene. The pattern of inheritance of autosomal recessive gene. Okay, what is going to happen is that instead of the first one is 50-50, the person will have a chance of 50-50 that the offspring is going to be affected is 50%, and that the children will be unaffected, the probability is still going to be 50%. But in this case, because it is as a result of, it is caused by defects in the recessive gene, so that is telling us that if that happens, that is telling us that both parents must have been a carrier. Both parents must have been a carrier, okay, but not affected. He must have been a carrier. Apart from that, being a carrier, so by the time they now give birth, so this is child 1, child 2, child 3, child 4, for example. So what is going to happen is that they will have 50%. You have 50%. So their own is going to be 25%, ratio 50%, ratio 25%, which is the same thing as 1 to 1. So what that means is that so this one, so this is these two affected male, okay, affected son and daughter. The probability is going to be 50% that they will be affected. Carrier, which could be son or daughter, irrespective. Don't forget that I said irrespective of the sexes. When I said affected son and daughter, it could also be affected daughters. If this one is this one can be a male, a female, a female. This one can also be a male, a male. So it can be affected sons. It can be affected daughters. Then it can be affected sons and daughter. Okay. So this is going to be 25% that is going to be a carrier, and the other 25% is going to be unaffected by this condition. Unaffected. So this is how to actually to diagnose whether your client has the probability they have the probability of giving birth to this set of people if two of them are known carrier of any infection. That is, if they have heterozygotes. If they have heterozygotes, don't forget that I said it is hetero, and that's why it is recessive, and that is the reason why. So if you look at the first one, when they say dominant, they said autosomal dominant inheritance. That means if it is either the mother or the mother, it is going to be dominated. The person will be affected. So because it is going to be double what? It's going to be double. If the gene that is controlling that is a HA, so it's going to be capital letter. That's why they call it autosomal dominant inheritance. But in the case of autosomal recessive inheritance, that is why the person, that means the person is, the two will be partially, none of the parents will be affected, but what it means that the two parents, both of the parents will now be a carrier for that disease. And if that happens, there is a 1-to-1 ratio, that is 25%, 50% to 25% ratio of carrying this into, that is the first generation will be like this. So that is one thing I want you to know. It is autosomal dominant inheritance because that condition is what is present in a dominating pattern. It is present in dominating pattern, and that's why one of the parents must be affected. It could be the mother, it could be the father. Don't forget that because it is not X-linked, that means it's not with respect to the sex chromosome. That's why they call it autosomal dominant inheritance. So, because if any of the parents will be affected, it will be totally. That means it's going to be affected totally. Then the second one, which is autosomal recessive inheritance. So that's telling you that in case of cystic fibrosis, and I told you that any person that has cystic fibrosis is as a result of mutation in the CFTR repeat, that is a gene. And what happened is that the lungs, the pancreas, the liver, the intestine, all of them are going to be affected. Then the clinical manifestation, I told you, uncontrollable sneezing and wheezing. Then the person will be coughing from morning till night, coughing, shortness of breath. The person will not be able to breathe well. In fact, you will even think maybe that person is having one other respiratory infection like that. Okay, then the person will continually producing thick and very sticky mucus. There will be retarded growth, malnutrition will set in, and eventually the person will not be able to give birth. So that is infertility. And this kind of infection or trait can be in form of what? In form of the inheritance pattern is going to follow that, which is going to be 25%, 50%, and 25% again. Don't forget that this is the first generation. So, sorry, the first generation will always start from here. Sorry, we start from the parents. So this will be the second generation. Then the children of this will now be the third generation, and so on and so forth like that. So you need to, and you are going to have the third generation, that if any of this, if all this one begin to get married, so that means the third generation is already setting in. So you can also predict, because the pattern, if a condition or if any trait is as a result of autosomal recessive gene, so it's going to follow this pattern. However, the third generation is also going to follow a different pattern entirely. So that's why we said pedigree is one of the symbolic representation of inheritance pattern or traits or any disease, which here I call them bad blood. Why I'm focusing on diseases is just because I title it bad blood. That means the gene that is already affected as a result of genetic infection. So sometimes when I say pedigree and consanguinity, tools to diagnose, so you can actually use this pedigree to be able to predict what the past generation could have been and what the second generation will also be. So the predictive measure or the predictive tools that you use as a genetist or as a genetic counselor is what is called a pedigree. So that's why you need to do a lot of consultation and be very close to the family so that you're able to see exactly what is going on in that family. So that is the second condition of autosomal recessive gene. Don't forget, I've told you the difference between autosomal recessive gene and autosomal dominant gene. I told you that a condition that is autosome from chromosome 1 to 22, and the term recessiveness of dominance, the difference is just that in dominance condition, that means the one of the parents is affected. One of the parents that is affected is now getting married to somebody who is unaffected. That is affected multiplied by not affected. That is why it is called dominant. But in case of autosomal, so two of them are partial for that kind of trait. That is, they are carriers. Two of them are carriers, and by the time they are carrier, they have the probability that they will pass it to their children is going to be 25, 50, 25. That is, they will be affected is 50%. They will be unaffected is 25%. They will be carrier is also 25%. So that is just that probability. So that means the probability that they will give birth to set of children that one way or the other that they will look exactly like the parents is what? Is 25%, because it is only the one that is a carrier that is exactly like both the parents. The other one that are affected, that is the 50% that are affected, those ones, they will be entirely different from the parents, the two parents. And those ones that are unaffected, that is going to be 25%, they will also be entirely too different from both parents. So these are part of what I actually want you to know. This is exactly what are part of what I want you to know, so that by the time you are trying to differentiate, you might not actually need to cram anything. What you just want is just that what you need to know is just that you should be able to differentiate between autosomal recessive and autosomal dominant, and that is the two reasons and two best way to be able to. Then their clinical manifestation is also very, very different. In the case of autosomal dominant, that means their central nervous system is going to be more affected. That central nervous system is going to be more affected, because that is why they call it neurodegenerative syndrome, neurodegenerative condition. And that is exactly what I want you to know. So let's go to condition 3. Condition 3, which is X-linked recessive traits or inheritance. X-linked recessive inheritance, okay? And that is a condition, X-linked, this is X-linked recessive, this recessive, X-linked recessive inheritance. X-linked, so this is a condition of hemophilialism. So that person, the first thing is that the person will be, it is also called bleeding disorder. It's also called bleeding disorder. So the clot factor 7, which is called the clotting factor of that person, will be affected. So factor 7, which is called there are two categories hemophilia. There are two categories. So some that are having deficiency in factor 7, they are called hemophilia A or group A, and those ones that are having deficiency in their factor 9, so this one are called hemophilia B. They are called hemophilia B. So, and exactly what happened is just that the disorder, is as a result of their inability to stop bleeding. So that's why they call it hemophilia. Hemophilia. Okay, hemo from hemoglobin. Now we said it is X-linked. From this word, when it is X-linked, that means it is inherited in heterozygous condition. It is inherited in a heterozygous condition. So if H, so that means somebody that is having this, it is inherited in HH. So it is inherited in HH. So that means somebody that is having H, small letter H, is going to be affected. Then again, it is X-linked. Yeah, it is X-linked because don't forget that I told you that chromosome 1, 22, these are called the autosomal or the autosomes, whereas chromosome 23 is called the sex-linked. And for male is having one X chromosome and one Y chromosome, and female is having two X chromosomes. So whatever, and you should know at this point in time that chromosome Y, they do not carry any gene. They do not carry any gene. There is a particular genetic term that they normally use for chromosome 1. Chromosome Y, because they do not carry any gene at all. So if there is any deficiency in sex chromosome, that means it must be as a result of what? Deficiency in X. So that's why they call it X-linked recessive inheritance, because Y do not carry any gene. So Y will only determine whether the person is going to be a male or the person is going to be if Y is represented during the process of fertilization, that means the child is going to be a male. If Y, that is, if the male donates Y chromosome, so it's going to be XX. So if the male donates X, this time around it's going to be female. So that is what you should know, and that's why they call it X-linked recessive gene. So let's now look at what could be the clinical manifestation of this. The first one is that even after a very minor injury, there will be excessive bleeding. Excessive. It will be in excess. Bleeding, including bleeding from the nose. Bleeding from anywhere. That's why you see some people, anytime at all, you just see them that they will just be bringing out blood from the nose. That's as a result of a condition that is called hemophilia, and is as a result of X-linked recessive gene. Then apart from that, the person will be so vulnerable to bruising. So the person, in fact, a very small bruise on them like this, they're already coming up with bleeding. So, and apart from that, sometimes they can also have delayed bleeding. After injuries or after some surgery. Just discover that as if they are carrying out bloodless surgery. So whereas they are not. So anybody who is suffering from this kind of a syndrome, we actually experience this. And apart from that, the person who have blood-stained urine or stool will become blood-stained. Then, apart from all this, they have bleeding gum. So you just see them whenever they just come across any small bruise like this, even with toothpaste, they are already toothbrush. They are already coming up with a lot of blood that will be coming to them. So that is the clinical manifestation of that kind of infection. Okay, and now let's look at what is going to happen. Let's see what is going to happen to. So they also have it because it is recessive as well. Because it is recessive, so that is telling us that the pattern that will be able to tell us what is going to be the pattern of that inheritance. Okay. Now, majorly because it is X-linked, majorly this kind of infection or disease is more associated to the father. So if you have, let's see, it is recessive, that means the father is marrying somebody who is not infected at all. It's not infected, it's not even a carrier. So the probability that they will pass it on, then now it is going to be X-linked. So that means the sex matters this time around. Whether the person is going to be a male or it's going to be a female, it matters this time around. Okay. So if this is the first child, second child, third child, and fourth child, this kind of inheritance is more in the female. It's more in male than in female. So if you now see the female being affected, if you see the female being affected, and the probability that the female will be affected is 50%. Is 50%. So we need to know, we need to be aware of this, that whenever you see somebody who is hemophiliac, so that means, especially if it is a daughter, the daughter, it must have been inherited from the father, because it is that father that is having that bad gene or bad blood. Don't forget here, the first one, the first condition, because it is dominant. So that is the father is having the bad gene. Although the mother, it could be the father or the mother, but either one of them is going to marry a normal person. Going to marry somebody who is unaffected. But the second condition is when you have two of them to be what? To be carriers. That is the second condition. But the third condition now is that only the male, because it is X-linked, only the father that must be a carrier. And whenever the mother or the father is a carrier, the father has the probability of passing this bad gene to the daughters, than him carrying it to the son. So we need to know this because it is this is going to be 50%. 50%. And it is, I said it is more common in a male to pass it across to the female. I mean to the female of that kind of generation. So you need to know that. So that is the condition that you see. That is the condition that you see now. You can see that this is a autosomal recessive. Sorry, this is a condition which is called X-linked. And I told you the meaning of X-linked. The meaning of X-linked is that it is as a result of bad blood that is noticeable in the sex chromosomes. It is noticeable in sex chromosome, and that is chromosome 23. So it is noticeable there. And I told you that somebody who is suffering from this, it is also called the bleeding disorder. Also called bleeding disorder. Somebody who is having defect gene in factor 7 is called hemophiliac A or group A. Somebody who is having problem with factor 9, the person will be categorized as B. And just like I said, that these are the clinical manifestation of all of somebody who is hemophiliac. Number one is that the person is going to have excessive bleeding. Sometimes there will be delayed bleeding, sometimes to the level that even after major surgery, the person might not even bring out blood, and is as a result of that. Then apart from that, the person who have blood in their urine as well as in the stool, that is very, very important. They will also bring out blood even from their nose. They are very subjective to having, in a very minor bushing like this, they are bringing out blood. They are bringing out blood. Okay, so you need to know this. Then their gum is going to be bleeding every time. So, and the pattern of inheritance of this is what we see on the board. So, and that is what I told you, that because it is X-linked, I said because it is X, that bad blood must have come from chromosome X of the father, not of the mother. The mother, the X chromosome of the mother is not subjective to having bad blood. So, and that is the reason why you see that in this case 3 of X-linked recessive inheritance, we can see that the bad blood is actually coming from bad blood or bad gene. It's actually coming from the father, who is a carrier. And because the father is a carrier, he has 50% chance of passing it into the daughter, into his daughter, than to the son. And that's why we said it has a 50% chance. It is a 50% chance that the daughter is going to be more affected. So you need to know that. That is the third condition. Don't forget what we are doing. We are trying to look at the symbolic representation, or the symbolic representation of an instrument or a tool that we can use to diagnose bad blood, bad gene. Not only bad blood or bad gene, just like I said that because it is actually talking about bad blood, because I wanted to focus on disease. That's why I term it as a bad blood. So we can also use it to diagnose even good blood, if there's anything to say like that. Also good blood, because sometimes there are some traits that will also follow this kind of inheritance. So, and if all these traits follow this kind of inheritance, that means we will not be talking about clinical manifestation. But because we are talking about bad blood. That is why there is a emphasis on what is going to be the clinical manifestation in case we see genetic diseases like this. So without wasting our time, let us go to the last condition, and that is a condition where we have that does not even have any bearing with the main chromosome. It doesn't have any bearing with the male chromosome. The problem is not from the male chromosome or the inheritance pattern. The trait is not located on the main chromosome. It is rather located on the mitochondria, and that is why we said it is going to be the fourth pattern of inheritance, and that is called fourth mitochondrial inheritance. And if somebody is suffering from this kind of inheritance, it is I told you that condition is known as Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. That is LON. LHON. Okay. So just from the word, the clinical manifestation, okay, the cause is as a result of bad blood that is located in the mitochondria. The bad gene are found in the mitochondrial DNA. Don't forget that I said mitochondria is a semi-autonomous organelle that has its own DNA, although very, very small DNA. And wherever there is DNA, certain segment of the DNA is what is called gene. And this gene may be good or may be bad. That's why we term it as a bad blood if it is bad. And that's why it will now have a condition that is called Leber's hereditary optic neuropathy. Okay, so if the bad blood or the bad gene is now located on the chromosome, on mitochondria, this time around, not other not in the nucleus. Don't forget that chromosomes are found in the nucleus. So chromosome 1 to 23, they reside in the chromosome. But in a case, the other organelles like mitochondria, and that's the only organelle that has its own DNA too. So that DNA, the fact that they have their DNA means that there will be some genes that will be located on that chromosome. And once it is located, that means it's also very, very likely that there could be impairments of all these genes. So if there is any impairment or any disease condition there, that is a condition that is called Leber's hereditary optic nerve. Okay, the first clinical manifestation of this, very common, just from that word, that means there will be loss of vision. Okay, apart from loss of vision, the person will have decreased visual ability. You just discover that the person will not be able to see well. Person will not be able to see well. Then the person will be color blinded. Person will not be able to differentiate between color. So in fact, there will be a condition that loss of this vision will lead to permanent loss. Permanent visual acumen. Okay, so all these conditions are very, very common. And don't forget that this kind of condition, because it is not located on the main chromosome, we find it very, very difficult to actually come up with with any pattern of inheritance. So the only thing is that whether it is whether the person, irrespective of male, whether the person is a male or female, all of their children will be affected. All, whether it is the male that is the mother that is having it, all will be affected. All the children will be affected, and no exception. Or whether it is the father, all the children will be equally affected. So that is one thing that you need to know about the. So that is telling us that, for example, now let's assume that this is still an hypothetical example, that it is the father that is having it, irrespective of the number of children that they will have. This is a child 1, child 2, 3, 4. All, whether they are male or female, all will be affected. So you need to know all will be affected, and that is telling you that their generation is in jeopardy. So this is generation 1, generation 2. So because all these are affected, that means they will also pass it on to the next generation. The next generation will also pass it on. So anytime you now see that is that all children are affected by certain, they have certain manifestation, certain impairment, or like that have to do with a loss of vision, decreased visual ability, color blindness, loss of vision or permanent this one, you should know that, oh, that is very easy to diagnose, irrespective of whether it is the male that is affected or the female that is affected. What's going to happen is that all their children, for the next generation, all of them will become impaired in vision, and as a result of what? Because the pattern of inheritance of a mitochondrial inheritance is going to continue and going to endure for forever in that kind of family. So that is what you should know. So in order to crown our discussion of today, don't forget that that is what I want to talk about on pedigree. The second and the last aspect of that of this topic is consanguinity. And I told you that consanguinity is just the practice of a kind of a marriage practice. Is a marriage practice that encourages intermarriage between first cousin or second cousin, or marriage that is coming up between blood related individuals, or individuals with common ancestors. So they have common ancestors, and it's part of what I told you to do, the task. So I'm going to give you the task, and please just do it and send the task. Send it to the comment section. And do the task. So the task is that, what do you understand by consanguineous marriage? What do you understand by that? Okay, that is A. Then the B aspect of it is that of what importance is consanguineous marriage in medicine, in human genetics? in human genetics. So should not be more than everything should not be more than 250 words. So please write it and do it in the comment section, and um, submit. Make sure you do it in the next within the next 30 minutes, and let me be having affecting your answers or your response from the comment section. So, but don't forget that consanguinity is the practice, is a kind of practice whereby intermarriage between first, second cousin or blood related individuals are being encouraged, or people that are related by having the same or common ancestors. So don't forget, I sincerely want to thank our viewers at home, because it has not been easy. Anyway, it has not been easy. I want to thank you very well for very much, because of your dedication to the educational series of Om3ga Bio-Edutainment. Thank you, and God bless you. Don't forget to hit the notification button, like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.